Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happens when Michael J. Fox, the beloved actor and advocate who spent decades inspiring millions through his resilience, sits down on The View and ends up clashing head-on with Joy Behar over one of the most human questions of our time: is technology replacing real connection? The conversation began light, with Michael joking about his kids teaching him how to use new gadgets, and Joy cracking wise about AI assistants knowing her better than her exes. But things turned serious when Michael argued that all the convenience in the world can't replace a real human moment, a hug, a shared laugh, a friend sitting with you through the hard stuff. Joy pushed back, saying technology isn't the enemy, it's the evolution. You either adapt or you get left behind. The studio split. Whoopi tried to mediate, but the emotion in Michael's voice made it clear this wasn't just a debate, it was personal. And when the discussion hit its breaking point, what happened next left the studio silent, as Michael stood up, said one last line, and walked off the set. Millions would soon be replaying the moment, wondering, have we gone too far in trading touch for technology?
The morning on The View started off like any other: bright lights, a buzzing audience, and Whoopi Goldberg easing everyone into today's trending topics. But when the screen behind them flashed the headline, "Is technology replacing human connection?" the tone shifted. Joy Behar leaned forward in her chair, reading the title with a smirk. Finally, a topic that doesn't make me want to throw my phone into the Hudson. The audience laughed, but sitting beside her, Michael J. Fox just smiled softly. "Give it a few minutes. You might end up proving the title right." The crowd chuckled. Joy looked amused. "Oh, so you're saying I'm disconnected already?" Michael shook his head. "No, Joy, I'm saying most of us are. We scroll, we text, we like, but when's the last time we really looked someone in the eye and listened?" It was gentle, thoughtful, the kind of insight people expect from Michael J. Fox. His charm wasn't just in his humor, but in his honesty. Sarah Haynes jumped in next. "But don't you think technology's also connected people in ways that weren't possible before? I mean, video calls, online support groups. Your foundation has used tech beautifully to reach people." Michael nodded. "Absolutely. Tech is an incredible tool, but that's the problem. It's supposed to be a tool, not a replacement." Joy raised her eyebrow. "Replacement? Come on, Michael. Nobody's replacing people with robots. We're just evolving. Society's moving faster and tech's helping us keep up. It's not bad, it's just life." He leaned back, hands clasped, the weight of his words measured. "I get that, but when I see people choosing screens over faces, or when families eat dinner with everyone scrolling, it's hard not to wonder what we're losing." There was a shift in the room, quiet agreement from parts of the audience, murmurs of reflection. Even Whoopi nodded slightly, sensing where this was heading. Michael continued, his voice soft but firm. "I've met people all over the world because of my condition, and the moments that changed me weren't online. They were in hospital rooms, fundraisers, and long talks with strangers who just wanted to connect. That's something technology can't recreate." Joy sighed, visibly resisting. "I get the sentiment, but you can't ignore the good either. My niece met her husband on a dating app. Kids today talk to their grandparents through FaceTime. That's not losing connection, that's expanding it." Michael smiled, patient but unyielding. "And yet somehow people say they feel lonelier than ever. How do you explain that?" The audience reacted audibly. It was the first subtle sting, not a jab, but a truth that cut deep. Ana Navarro jumped in, half joking to break the tension. "Maybe we're all just too addicted to TikTok to notice we're lonely." The studio laughed, easing the hair for a second, but the undertone was there. Michael's words had landed. He glanced around, his tone almost reflective now. "I'm not anti-technology. I just think there's a danger when it starts to define our relationships instead of supporting them. We say we're connected, but half the time we just broadcasting." Joy crossed her arms, clearly ready to spar. "But Michael, people evolve. My grandmother thought television would destroy conversation. My mom said the same about the telephone. Every generation panics about the next invention. Maybe this is just our version of that fear." Michael gave her a knowing look. "You might be right. But back then, people still talked. Now we're raising a generation that can't even make eye contact because everything happens through a screen." It was quiet for a moment. Then the audience broke into applause. Joy, not one to back down, waved her hand. "Oh, please, you sound like an old man yelling at clouds." Michael laughed, genuinely, but with an edge. Maybe? Or maybe I just remember when people used to talk to each other, not at each other. The applause grew louder, Whoopi smiling as she tried to keep things balanced. Okay, looks like we got a hot one today. Michael took a sip of water, the corners of his mouth still curved in that signature grin. But behind the humor, there was a seriousness in his eyes. You could tell this wasn't just about technology. It was about meaning and what it means to still feel human in a world that's starting to feel robotic. The debate had only just begun, and though no one in the studio realized it yet, this was only the beginning of a conversation that would push both Michael and Joy past the point of friendly debate into something raw, personal, and unforgettable.
The applause had barely faded when Joy leaned forward again, that familiar spark of defiance in her eyes. "Michael, you're romanticizing the past," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "People didn't sit around campfires baring their souls. Half the time they ignored each other over dinner, too. The only difference is now we do it on our phones." The audience laughed, but Michael didn't. He rested his elbows on the table, eyes steady. "It's not about pretending the past was perfect, Joy. It's about remembering what made it human." "Human?" Joy repeated with a hint of sarcasm. "You mean messy, loud, inconvenient? Technology smooths out the rough edges. It keeps people in touch who'd otherwise drift apart." Michael's voice stayed calm. "But what kind of touch are we talking about? Clicking a heart emoji isn't the same as holding someone's hand when they're scared." That line drew quiet applause. You could see some audience members nodding, older viewers perhaps, who understood what he meant. Joy rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, you act like nobody's holding hands anymore. People still care. They just use the tools available. What's wrong with that?" Michael turned slightly toward her. "Nothing until the tools start using us." The room reacted instantly. Laughter, gasps, applause. Joy smirked, but didn't back down. "Cute line, but let's be real, Michael. Without tech, half of your advocacy work wouldn't reach people. Without social media, you wouldn't have raised awareness the way you have." He nodded. "That's true, and I'm grateful for that. But awareness isn't the same as connection. I've met people who follow every update from my foundation, but they don't know their neighbor's name." Whoopi leaned in, sensing the shift. "So you're saying tech connects the world but isolates individuals?" "Exactly," Michael said. "It gives the illusion of closeness, but it's like being surrounded by people who are miles away." Joy chuckled, clearly unconvinced. "That's poetic, but people said the same thing about TV, the radio, even books. It's not the technology, it's the people. Blame human behavior, not the gadgets." Michael sighed, his voice dipping into something more reflective. "Maybe, but when every design, every algorithm is made to keep us glued to a screen, I can't help but think the gadgets deserve some of the blame." Sarah chimed in cautiously. "But doesn't it depend on how we use it? Like my mom lives alone. Alexa reminds her to take her meds, call me, even play her favorite music. That's connection for her." Michael smiled kindly. "That's beautiful, Sarah, but Alexa doesn't love your mom. You do." That line landed heavy. The crowd fell silent, then erupted in applause. Whoopi muttered, "That's deep," under her breath, shaking her head slightly. Joy crossed her legs, refusing to give an inch. "You're acting like tech is out to replace love. It's not. It's filling gaps where people can't be. Nurses can't be everywhere. Kids can't always visit their parents. What's the harm in having a little help?" Michael leaned in. "The harm comes when we stop trying. When we tell ourselves a machine can do the job of a person and we start believing it." Joy let out a small laugh, part irritation, part disbelief. "You sound like you want to go back to the Stone Age. Maybe we should all write letters and use payphones again." The studio laughed, but Michael didn't join this time. His tone was firm, his eyes steady. "No, Joy, I just think progress shouldn't cost us our empathy." The applause swelled again, and for a brief second, even Joy hesitated. But then she regrouped. "Empathy doesn't disappear because of screens. People choose to be cold. Don't put that on technology." Michael nodded slowly, the kind of nod that says, "I hear you, but you're missing the point." "Do you know what scares me?" he said quietly. "We've reached a place where people are more comfortable telling their feelings to a phone than to another person. And the worst part? The phone listens better. That one hit like a punchline and a confession rolled into one. Even Joy's smirk faltered. Whoopi stepped in gently. Michael, you've been open about your health journey and how much support matters. Do you think tech makes it harder for people to be there for each other? He took a breath. Sometimes, yeah. People text me, they comment on my posts, they send prayers online, and I appreciate it. But the moments that stay with me, they're the ones where someone shows up. No notifications, no filter, just real human presence. Joy folded her arms again. But that's not a tech problem, that's a society problem. You can't hold Apple responsible because people stopped visiting each other. Michael looked at her steadily. Maybe not. But when you design a world where every second of silence feels wrong unless you're staring at a screen, something's gone very wrong. That drew an emotional from the crowd. Joy opened her mouth to counter, but Whoopi raised her hand. Let's take a breath, guys. This one's cutting close to home. Michael gave a small nod, leaning back. It should, Whoopi, because this isn't about tech. It's about remembering we still need each other. The camera zoomed in on him as he said it, the studio quiet. The spark had turned into something raw, something more than debate. And though Joy tried to laugh it off, you could see it in her eyes. This wasn't just another segment. It was becoming something deeply personal.
The air in the studio had changed. The laughter that usually bounced off the walls of the view was replaced by an uneasy stillness. Even the audience seemed to sense that something had shifted. Michael leaned back slightly, his voice softer now. You know, I grew up before cell phones, before the internet. If you wanted to talk to someone, you had to show up. You had to make time. These days, everyone's too busy, but they somehow have hours to scroll through strangers' lives. Joy tried to keep her tone light. Well, maybe people prefer the scroll to small talk. Michael gave a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. And that's exactly what worries me. We're confusing convenience with connection. A like isn't love. A comment isn't conversation. That hit the audience right in the gut. You could almost hear people exhaling. Sarah nodded quietly. That's true. I've caught myself checking in on friends through Instagram stories instead of calling them. It's easy to pretend you're staying close when you're actually drifting apart. Michael turned toward her. Exactly. It's like standing outside a window, watching someone's life happen, but never knocking on the door. Joy interrupted, her tone edging sharper now. Michael, not everyone has the luxury of knocking on doors anymore. Technology is connection for most people. Seniors in nursing homes talk to their grandkids through tablets. Soldiers FaceTime their families from overseas. That's real connection too. Michael nodded respectfully. It's better than nothing. But I'm talking about what happens when that becomes everything. When the screen becomes the substitute instead of the bridge. Maybe that's just evolution, Joy countered. We adapt, the world changes, and connection changes with it. You can't stop progress just because it feels different. Michael's voice rose slightly, not in anger, but passion. But at what cost, Joy? What do we lose in that trade? You call it progress, I call it forgetting what makes us human. The tension tightened like a wire. Whoopi looked between them. You think tech's taken the place of people? Michael exhaled. I think it's training us to need people less. And once we stop needing each other, we stop caring. The audience murmured. Joy blinked, clearly unsettled but unwilling to yield. You're being dramatic. Nobody stopped caring. They're just using tools to make life easier. Easier, Michael repeated. You know what else is easier? Not showing up, not listening, not feeling. That line landed heavy. A few people clapped, but the mood was more solemn than celebratory. He paused, his voice lower now. When I got my diagnosis, I didn't want sympathy. I wanted connection. Real, messy, human connection. People who looked me in the eye and didn't pretend everything was fine. I'll tell you something. Those moments meant more than 1,000 messages online ever could. The crowd erupted in heartfelt applause. Even Whoopi nodded slowly, clearly moved. Joy leaned forward again, but this time her tone was quieter, almost defensive. Nobody's saying that isn't meaningful, Michael, but not everyone can show up in person. Some people need technology to bridge those gaps. It's not black and white. Michael nodded again. I agree. But it's becoming black and white when the tech starts telling us what to feel, what to watch, what to believe. Algorithms don't understand empathy. They understand engagement. That one drew a long from the audience. Joy sighed, visibly irritated. You act like the robots are coming to steal our hearts. It's not that serious. Michael turned his head slowly, his gaze calm but cutting. It's already serious, Joy. We're losing the art of presence. You can't scroll your way through grief or laugh your way through a screen when someone's holding your hand in pain. And someday, when we replace that with AI comfort bots and digital hugs, we'll realize what we've given up. The studio was silent again. Even Joy's usual sharp comebacks didn't come easily. Sarah tried to ease the tension. Maybe it's both. Maybe technology connects us and distances us. It depends on how mindful we are about using it. Michael looked at her and smiled gently. That's the balance I'm fighting for. Use the tools. Don't become them. Joy scoffed. That's easy to say when you've got fame, support, and people around you. But for many, technology is their lifeline. You can't guilt them for needing it. Michael's jaw tightened just slightly. I'd never guilt anyone for needing it, but I'll keep reminding people that nothing we build will ever replace the warmth of another person. The words lingered. Whoopi leaned in again. Michael, are you saying we've already crossed that line? He hesitated for a beat. I think we're standing on it. And if we don't start paying attention, we'll wake up one day realizing we don't remember what real connection feels like anymore. A hush fell over the set. You could feel the heaviness in the air, the kind that comes when truth cuts a little too close. Joy sat back, crossing her arms, her tone defensive now. You sound like you're giving up on people. I think we're smarter than that. We'll adapt. Michael looked at her, his voice steady. It's not about giving up. It's about waking up. The applause was thunderous. The camera caught Michael's eyes, clear, emotional, determined. Joy looked away, lips pressed tight, realizing she'd been outmatched not by logic, but by heart. Whoopi finally stepped in, breaking the tension with a half smile. All right, folks, I think we all need to hug someone after this one. The crowd laughed lightly, easing the mood, but the emotional weight stayed. Because everyone in that room, and everyone watching at home, knew Michael wasn't just talking about technology. He was talking about what it means to still feel human in a world slowly forgetting how to feel.
The studio lights seemed a little harsher now, casting a faint glow on Michael's face as he sat there, hands clasped, trying to keep his composure. Joy, meanwhile, was ready to push the conversation where she wanted it to go. Sharper, louder, more pointed. Michael, she said, I respect what you've done, I do. But sometimes it sounds like you want to turn back the clock. We can't. The world runs on technology now. People depend on it, for health, for work, for everything. Complaining about it won't change that. Michael tilted his head, a faint smile crossing his face. I'm not complaining, Joy. I'm warning. There's a difference. Joy leaned back in her chair, her arms folded. You make it sound like a threat. It's not. It's progress. Michael's tone hardened. Progress doesn't always mean improvement. We keep building things to make life easier, but not necessarily better. That struck a nerve. Joy frowned, tapping her pen against the table. You think a world with more access, more information, more medical breakthroughs isn't better? Michael took a slow breath. Access is great, but what's the point if we lose empathy in the process? Look around. People film tragedies instead of helping. We text condolences instead of showing up. We're efficient, but we're empty. The studio went quiet. The crowd murmured in agreement, though Joy didn't look convinced. Empty, she repeated, her voice rising. You're being dramatic. Technology isn't the reason people lack empathy. It just shows who they already are. Michael turned slightly toward her. No, Joy. It trains us to care less. Every time we scroll past suffering, every time we replace a real conversation with an emoji, we're teaching our hearts to go numb. That one landed hard. You could almost feel the weight of it. Joy exhaled sharply, shaking her head. You know what, Michael? Maybe that's just your perspective. Maybe you're the one afraid of change. Whoopi raised a brow, sensing danger. Careful, Joy. But Joy didn't stop. You've had a long, incredible career. People love you. But not everything that feels uncomfortable is bad. Some people find freedom in tech, especially those who can't move around easily. AI companions, online communities, virtual therapy, those things save lives. Michael's eyes darkened a little, and when he spoke, the warmth in his voice was gone.
You think a chatbot replaces a friend? You think a glowing screen can look someone in the eyes and tell them they matter? Maybe not perfectly, but it's better than nothing, Joy shot back. Michael's voice rose now, steady, but with quiet fire. Better than nothing isn't good enough for the people we love. The crowd gasped. It wasn't anger in his tone, it was heartbreak. He went on, his voice trembling slightly but gaining force. I've spent years watching people disappear behind screens. They think they're connecting, but they're not. They're isolating together. You can't program compassion. You can't download presence. And yet we keep trying, as if love was something we could automate. The audience erupted in applause. Even Whoopi sat back, visibly moved. Joy took a deep breath, clearly caught off guard, but unwilling to back down completely. You're emotional about it, I get that, but you're ignoring reality. Tech isn't going anywhere. So what do you want, Michael? For us to just unplug the world? Michael looked at her, eyes wet but unflinching. No, Joy. I want us to remember the world, before we turn it off entirely. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Joy broke the silence. You sound like you've already given up on humanity. Michael shook his head. No, I just miss it. It was quiet again, painfully quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't beg to be filled. Whoopi tried to diffuse the tension. I can't go 2 minutes without checking my phone either. A few laughs rippled through the crowd, but they faded quickly. Michael leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. You know what I realized, Whoopi? We don't even know how to be bored anymore. We're terrified of silence, of sitting still with our own thoughts. So we fill every gap with noise, and then wonder why we feel so disconnected. Sarah said softly, maybe silence is the connection we've forgotten. Michael smiled faintly. Exactly. Joy rolled her eyes slightly, trying to shift the tone back to control. You know, it's easy for you to say that. You have people around you, you have a family, but what about the ones who don't? For them, technology is the family. Michael looked at her with a kind of sadness that even Joy paused. Then the problem isn't that they have tech, Joy. It's that they have no one else. That line drew a sharp inhale from the audience, a collective gut punch that left Joy speechless for once. Whoopi looked at Michael with a knowing sadness. That's real, she said quietly. Michael nodded. We can't keep pretending screens can fill the holes that only people can. The more we depend on them for comfort, the lonelier we become. And one day, when the battery dies or the network goes down, we'll realize how far we've drifted from each other. Joy tried to force a smile, but it faltered. So what, Michael? What's your solution? Michael looked at her for a long moment. Maybe it's as simple as putting the phone down, looking someone in the eye, listening without multitasking, remembering that being human is the only thing tech can't replicate. The crowd erupted in applause, long, loud, emotional. Joy tried to respond, but the words caught in her throat. Michael didn't wait for another question. He stood slowly, adjusted his jacket, and said softly, If that's outdated, then I guess I am too. He smiled faintly, nodded toward Whoopi, and began walking off the set. The camera followed him as he left, not in anger, but in quiet conviction. The applause didn't stop, and for the first time in a long while, even Joy Behar sat in silence.
When the segment returned from commercial, there was a strange hush in the studio. The laughter that usually bounced between the co-hosts had evaporated. Joy Behar sat stiffly, trying to maintain her composure, while Whoopi looked off camera, likely waiting for a producer cue. The audience, still processing Michael J. Fox's abrupt exit, seemed unsure whether to clap or stay silent. Joy tried to smooth things over. Well, that was, unexpected, she said, forcing a smile. Technology can really get people fired up, huh? Her voice wavered slightly. She looked toward the empty chair where Michael had sat, as if half hoping he'd walk back in. But he didn't. Instead, Whoopi took the reins. You know, sometimes when something hits close to home, it's not about debate, it's about emotion. And for Michael, I think this topic wasn't just theoretical. It was personal. The audience nodded. Even Joy seemed to soften for a moment. She sighed, then admitted, maybe I came at it too strong. I forget sometimes that not everyone sees tech as the same kind of progress I do. Sonny Hostin leaned in. What he said about the human touch, though, that stays with you. There's truth in it. My grandmother used to say, you can't download kindness. I think that's what he meant. Anna Navarro jumped in, quieter than usual. He wasn't wrong. We talk about efficiency, cost, innovation, But we forget warmth. We forget that what makes care is connection. There was a rare moment of agreement on The View. The camera slowly panned over the panel as they sat in a reflective silence. Then, the screen cut to a clip from the hallway, a brief shot of Michael J. Fox outside the studio talking calmly with a producer. He looked tired but composed. When asked if he wanted to make a final statement, he smiled gently and said, "I just think we have to be careful. The moment we start trusting machines with the things that make us human, we risk losing something we'll never get back." The words played over a close-up of Joy, who blinked rapidly, visibly emotional. After the clip, Whoopi wrapped it up in her trademark low, steady tone. "That's a man who's lived it. You don't have to agree with him, but you should hear him." Applause broke out, not the roaring kind that follows a celebrity quip, but a slow, respectful rhythm. Online, that quiet moment became one of the most replayed clips of the year. Viewers flooded comment sections with support for Michael, calling his stance a reminder that empathy still matters. Others defended Joy, saying she represented the tough questions that needed asking. But underneath the debate, a shared truth surfaced. People missed being human together. That evening, Michael posted a short note on his social media. "I walked off because sometimes you have to. Not out of anger, but out of hope that someone out there remembers that care is more than convenience." The post went viral overnight. Hospitals, care homes, and advocacy groups reposted it with their own messages about compassion and technology. Even Joy Behar shared it on her page with a simple caption, "He's right." The View's Next Day episode opened with an acknowledgement of the moment. Whoopi said, "Yesterday wasn't comfortable, but it was real, and real conversations are the ones worth having." The audience applauded again. In the end, what started as a heated debate about artificial intelligence in senior care became something bigger. A reminder that connection, empathy, and presence can't be replicated by code. Michael J. Fox didn't just make a point. He left a message echoing through millions of screens, that in the rush toward a smarter world, we must never forget the heart that keeps it human. If you like this powerful moment, make sure to subscribe for more celebrity clashes, emotional showdowns, and unforgettable TV moments. Drop a comment below. Do you think technology has taken us too far from real human connection?